Okay, so as you see, the law allows for hybrid meetings. It allows for full in-person meetings, but it also provides that where some people, because of extraordinary circumstances, need to appear virtually, that they can do that with certain provisos. The board itself must make a determination that they want to engage in this kind of hybrid meeting, and they have to set forth the parameters that guide it in determining when somebody can appear virtually. So I know a lot of the boards are well on their way to passing resolutions, setting out those guidelines, and I think that's terrific. They would also have to, of course, when you have people who are attending virtually, you also have to allow, during the public session, you have to allow for members of the public to attend virtually. Let's see, I'm going down this list. Woo! Oh, now the big issue is that in order to have quorum and go ahead with your meeting, only those who are attending in person can be counted toward quorum. That's going to be the hurdle that people have to get over, because that requires you to have a major presence in person. And there you have to find meeting locations, and you have to deal with the parameters of distance, masking, and so forth for whatever site you're using. Let's see. Yes, you have to have, as you're already doing, allow during the public session for the public to participate virtually. Notices that you are going to have a hybrid meeting have to be posted. The minutes recording that there was a partial virtual participation have to be posted. Let's see. And of course, I think that you have to have compliance with the ADA, which is closed captioning, which those things happily already happen in Zoom, can happen in Zoom, as does a transcript. So that's convenient. Let's see, have I missed any of these provisions, Tricia?
No, I think that you have done well. Do you want to just mention the one thing that we had discussed yesterday about adding in maybe one more statement about if an executive order is in place?
Right. The law, also, like, those people who are participating virtually, they have to be continually to be present. They have to continually be identifiable in terms of visually and their name, their chiron, for given their name. Yeah, so the law also provides that when the state or a local government chief operating officer of a local government, that's the mayor here, declares a state of emergency, that boards can in fact have fully virtual meetings. In order to do that, and this is sort of an odd little thing, the board has to determine that this particular state of emergency interferes or hobbles their ability to have in-person meetings. So it's just sort of a statement that the board has to enact. Now, I believe that in order to take a position, boards have to have a full board vote. So what I think a number of boards are doing is, when they put this resolution together to put before on the parameters and the guidelines that they're going to use in the future for hybrid meetings, that they also put in a provision on that tracks the statute, saying when and if there is a continuation or a declaration of a disaster by a state or the city, we find that impedes our ability to hold in-person meetings, and then you can have all virtual meetings during a declared state or local disaster emergency. So now, what boards are dealing with, and we are trying to assist with, is, okay, what if we want to have a hybrid meeting or even a fully in-person meeting under the conditions we're dealing with now? well, number one, we are in a declared state of emergency through June 14th. So you have this little period. But we also have a city declared state of emergency. So after June 9th, that you have to have something in place, finding each board finding and determining that this state of emergency interferes with your ability to have an in-person meeting. And then you can go ahead with that. Sounds a little convoluted, but we're here to help you and walk you through it. The other issue then arises, like if we want to have some people or hybrid meeting, what can boards do and not do in terms of protections and enforcing that? We have pushed the law department for clarity. Obviously, you can require the distancing of, I believe it's 3 feet now, but somebody can correct me. We were told, and I sent, excuse me, to some of the DMs, the information we got from Corp Counsel that says, in light of the newly declared condition red, that they would be fine with requiring masks. However, they're still saying before you impose on the public vaccine requirements, that you contact them. And I think explain the justification for that. But at this point, we're, trying to get you guys at a position where, if you wish, and if you make a determination for the next month or so, 2 months, month and a half, you can do all virtual meetings. Tricia, left anything out?
I think that's a good place to start. I'm sure everybody's going to have questions as I see popping up. So we'll start going through questions. I think I saw Tammy's hand first, even though it went down. So Tammy, will go to you first, then we'll go down the list.
So first, I want to say thank you so much for the memo and for helping us get through some of this. It really is very complicated. I personally, as the chair, do not want to be, I saw that the memo says extraordinary. It deems the word extraordinary. I don't know if is there a legal definition on extraordinary beyond. And the reason why I say that is I do not want to be the arbiter of fate for people. I mean, if I had my choice, almost everyone would be in person, obviously, and I don't have to have this argument or decision. We do have a variety of different age groups on our board. We have a lot of 9/11 survivors who are immunocompromised. We have people who need mobility and accessibility inclusion options. So I have a lot of diversity from youth to not so youthful and everywhere in between, and trying to gauge that. I mean, yes, I have two board members currently who have had surgery, and their recovery is a long road, but they are able to participate virtually. Without a doubt, hands down, they're going to be the two that I'm going to say right now. Absolutely, you don't need to come in because they physically can't at the moment, but they can participate fully on WebEx. Beyond that, how do you determine? I mean, I'm having trouble we're trying to figure this out in terms of, it says childcare. Well, that's a last minute drop. What if we have only quorum by one in person? Then do I have to wait until the people on hybrid, you have to come in? So that's a big question I have that I want to know. And then the other question that came is, when you're in person, even if you're at quorum, if somebody goes to the bathroom, which you can, right, and returns to the room. On virtual, if that person is there, they must have their camera on all the time. If they need to leave, do they need to say, I'm stepping out for the bathroom, I will be right back, and then come back? Is it okay in chat? Those kinds of things sound ridiculous to ask, but it's important.
Can I say it's not at all ridiculous, Hemi? And you always ask wonderful questions. I would, working backwards, I would say if somebody has to leave the room, it's exactly the same as they have to leave the room at a live meeting, in-person meeting, and what happens? We all remember what happens. Whoever's running the meeting, whether it's secretary or the DM, we keep an eye out. And if too many people leave the room, or in the hall talking or doing whatever they need to do, it would tell the chair, hey, we may have just lost quorum, right? But, and you hustle people back, but it's exactly the same. If you leave the room, you leave the room, and when you come back, you're back in the room. The other issue is going to be the most difficult, how you set up the criteria for entitlement to appear virtually. We're hoping to get guidance from the state on that to pass along to you. But obviously, in my opinion, health concerns meet the criteria, especially, people who are immunocompromised or in a recovering, as you say. I would say that, last minute loss of childcare, obviously, is extraordinary. But things that just like, I don't feel like it, or don't meet the criteria. We are going to try and help you each, all the way to set out reasonable criteria. Of course, it also requires that in your minutes, you explain the justification for each person who is appearing virtually, why they are permitted to appear virtually, and you have to do that without compromising their privacy. So you would say something general like, health concerns, rather than their specific, nobody's business what that might be, right?
Do we say it or do they say it?
Well, whoever, you have to record why they are being permitted to appear virtually. So that has to appear in the minutes according to the law. According to the law department, the reason that has to appear in the minutes, according to the law department, is that you need to show in the minutes that you're in compliance with the law. So, and you want to make sure you do that, even though it's not specific in the law, you have to state it in the minutes. You want to do that to show you're in compliance, and you want to do that without obviously compromising privacy.
I think the question is, when we do a roll call to start the meeting and count for attendance, could I have whoever it is say, for example, if it was me, say Tammy Meltzer, Community Board 1, for example, here, participating virtually due to medical?
Well, I believe if you look at the law, that has to be prearranged. You have to know beforehand that, Tammy Meltzer has, submitted a request to appear virtually and, met the criteria that the board has set out.
Yep, got it.
But it's a thicket, and the law is a little bit complicated, and we're going to have to, help and get through it together.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I see Craig, Stephen, Paul, Janine, Xavier, but I also just want to recognize our Councilmember Julie Menon, who's joined us. So Councilmember, if you don't mind, we'll just get through the people who had raised their hands, and then we'll cut this just to let you address our group, because I know your schedule is busy.
That's great. Thanks.
Thanks. So we'll go next to Craig.
Thanks, Tricia. Adele, I'm sitting in for Vicky today. Our full board meeting happens to be on June 9th, and I know you sort of went through this, but I just want to review it one more time. So as I said, our full board meeting is on June 9th, and what we were going to do is probably have to have an emergency meeting before June 9th to say we can do hybrid, to vote on whether or not we can do hybrid on June 9th, right? Because you have to be in compliance beforehand. With the emergency proceedings being extended, do we still need to have an emergency meeting on, let's say, June 8th or June 7th of the full board to say there's an emergency declaration or whatever it's called, and the board feels that we can't have a full in-person, we want to be fully remote for June 9th. Do we need to have basically what'll tantamount to be a 10-minute meeting for the full board, just to say basically we're going to have a fully remote meeting?
I can give you my legal opinion. I haven't talked to the law department about this, but given that you're dealing with declared states of emergency, seems to me that you can use, I'm sure your bylaws provide for an emergency exec decision that is later ratified by the board.
Okay,
That's just my take on it. It seems ridiculous when you're following up on
Right.
something, a finding because of a state of emergency, that you can't do that as an emergency meeting. And so you would do that and then have the board ratify it on the 9th.
okay,
I think almost all bylaws have that provision.
yes, we do.
That's, again, I can follow up on that, but
Yeah,
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Adele, but just to be clear, the most recent 11.06 version of the executive order has extended the emergency until June 14th.
14th.
So Craig, you guys should be fine to meet virtually on June 9th for your regular meeting.
Right,
now.
as long as you make that determination beforehand.
by the executive committee to be ratified on the 9th.
I don't see any other way that you should reasonably be expected to.
Okay,
I mean, you can't have a quick full board meeting on June 8th to prepare for that.
right, it just kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
But on June 9th, as Tricia said, the law will be in effect, and in order to take advantage of the declared state of emergency, which is then in effect, you have to find that it interferes with your ability. The law's a little weird, but we can do it.
And then the second question that I have is on all the entitlements and the health concerns, which are very valid. But I guess the question is, how much can we ask as a board, as the chair of the board? Because what we don't want to do is violate any privacy concerns, HIPAA concerns. But if somebody just says, well, I'm sick, well, 27 people could just say I'm sick because they have the sniffles or they just don't feel like going and they just say it. So I can see a situation where it gets out of hand. But on the other hand, I don't want to ask somebody's medical problems because quite frankly, it's not our business. People are entitled to their privacy and their, so how do we, and I don't know if you even have an answer for this, how do we juggle that and how do we protect ourselves from everybody's 27 people saying, well, I just don't feel, I just have health concerns.
Yeah, you've described the thorniest part of this, this procedure that you have to go through. Again, we're hoping to get much more specific guidance, but I would think that the kind of, as we say, the burden may be on the person seeking to appear virtually to satisfy, whether it's the chair or whoever is, looking at the guidelines that you have adopted to say yes or no. So if they say, oh, I just feel sick, it has to somehow be related to attending an in-person meeting. It can't be, I broke my finger. So, but it's one thing for you to hear that, and of course, it's whether or not you reveal that in the minutes. That you would not do. So we're gonna try and help you guys flesh that out a little more, but yeah, it's a problem.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Stephen, then Paul, then Janine.
Thank you, and Adele, pleasure to see you, and thank you very much for this. Very, very helpful. Three quick things just to continue to bring on, which I think this will probably be the toughest spot for our boards, which is again that exemption. Great to hear that you're going to give further guidance. Might make a suggestion. It would be interesting to get kind of here's what is approved. It might also be interesting to say these are things that may not get approved. As much guidance as you can give in that, I think that'll be the area that I certainly could say CB7 will have lots of conversation, and it's often it's much a better way to say this was the guidance we get, and that kind of shapes the conversation a little narrower. The question that I have is on I'm sorry. The question that I have is about getting quorum. If you are in a hybrid meeting, and this is really general, but this is something we've struggled with for a year and a half. If we don't have a quorum, can the meeting continue on without voting? So can we continue on with the meeting? And does it just mean that there could be no voting in that meeting? Or do we have to stop the meeting for no quorum?
Yeah, I think it depends on, again, boards knew how to deal with this before COVID. If, the DM or secretary says to you, Chair, we've just lost quorum, I think in most cases you can continue discussions, but you can't vote. That's, you have to like look to your policies and your bylaws. Again, losing quorum in a hybrid meeting would be the same as losing quorum in an in-person meeting. It doesn't, I think, mean you have to stop the meeting, but it's a concern for if a vote is coming up.
What if you never, so you just said lose, and I just want to clarify, what if you never got quorum? Can you continue? What if, can you move
It's
on?
not a meeting without quorum.
Can you continue on with the conversation with the people that
You
are
can
there?
have informal conversations. You can talk amongst yourselves. That's what a lot of boards do. But obviously you can't consider or pass any resolutions. And interestingly, if you don't have quorum under the open meetings law, it's not a meeting. So the parameters of the open meetings law don't apply. But you also aren't having a meeting. And
Wait, but
it's
that's,
happened, right? It's
we've
happened.
been having problems having quorum in several of our committee meetings, particular ones that are bigger. And they've asked me for guidance, and I think that what you're confirming is that if you do not have quorum in the beginning of a meeting, you can have a conversation, but you cannot vote or vote on any matters. And I
Right.
think that's what you're saying, correct?
Yes, yes.
Great. And then I'm just noting, I have other questions similar to what Craig had said about that date, but I don't want to continue taking time. So I'm going to follow up with you either through email, or maybe we could set a quick call and sort of what's that sequencing around June. I think it's 14th, but I don't want to take more time to do this here. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Great, then we'll go, I believe Paul was next.
Hi, good morning. So I have like two questions. One, just making sure anybody who's virtual, their votes will count, right? If we have quorum and everything like that, just double checking that
Yes.
their votes will count. Okay, so I'm concerned, maybe it's a bigger picture issue, that we're going to run out of funding to run hybrid meetings and not have enough funding to keep this thing going. So I know for us, we have CB3 has the executive committee tonight. We're going to vote on the resolution tonight as an executive committee before we present the full board on Tuesday. And if they say yes to the hybrid meeting structure, I'm concerned that, well, this may be all for naught down the line when we don't have the funding for it.
I'm gonna pass that to Tricia.
Yeah, there you go.
No, I appreciate it. So I of course appreciate this, and I want to make sure that you just know that every time our borough president has talked about the move to hybrid or the creation of more options, I'd say for community boards to meet and do the business that they are responsible for doing, it has never been without the statement saying that they also need the additional resources in order to get that job done. Chris, if you're not on a call right now, I was hoping that you might be able to speak to this a little bit more as well, because he's been working on our testimony when it comes to budget. He's been working with our budget team. This is something that we take very seriously and have been doing everything we can to really emphasize this with the mayor's office. And as budget talks still going on, we absolutely understand that this is a lift for our boards. But Chris, maybe if you could say a few words to that too.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's something that is pretty clearly a problem. So we've been working with City Hall to elevate the issue, certainly through the budget process. I've also been working with the other borough presidents, so I don't think it will shock anybody have similar concerns. It is something that like we can't really address in the state legislature, obviously. So we're definitely working on it with City Hall. They know, and it's going to be a question of whether or not we can get a little more funding actually for each community board to deal with this specifically. It's something that Tricia and I have talked about. It would be super helpful to have a sense of like what that actual number means for everybody. And so like if there is going to be a concern of a shortfall, or if there is some sort of cost associated very specifically with being able to do this, that'd be good for us to be able to know, so we can continue to be pushing for a number along those lines. I obviously can't speak for OMB or for City Hall, but this is something that obviously is important, and totally understand it's going to be a challenge for a bunch of boards.
Thanks, Chris. I would just say, just to echo that, just let me know. I've been talking to a lot of your district managers about this, whether or not it's the cost of additional owls, or if it's the cost of an outside vendor that you guys use, or if it's a cost, just trying to understand what the cost is to every board. So please keep us in the loop on that, because it is really helpful to actually get some numbers down. Great. Then I think it's Janine. Janine, you're muted.
Sorry, I have several questions. Is there any guidance in time, how far in advance of the meeting somebody needs to request attending virtually? Obviously, there's last minute things when you're last minute sick or childcare, but for healthcare reasons, just because obviously that will help manage it. And second question is, from June 9th to June 14th, do we all need to pass something that allows us to continue to be 100% virtual? And is it possible to pass something that we could be virtual through June 30th? And then for the technology side, we have a very small conference room, so it's great for committee meetings, but it's in a residential building. So for example, SLA meetings often go till midnight or 1 in the morning because we have such a heavy calendar. And they would like to have those at a church because a lot of people still kept showing up when we did hybrid. And are we required to still go virtual? I mean, have a hybrid option, or can we choose to only be in person? And I think from the tech perspective, our biggest obstacle is mobile technology that you could take from our tiny conference room and bring to a church basement and somehow get it working without having Z or some expert come in and spend hundreds of dollars.
Right. Thanks. So taking the last one first, the board under the law can actually choose to go all in person. You also can determine, and one of the things you have to come up with in your plan, and that's going to be a resolution, is whether or not your committees will go all in person or hybrid. That's up to you. The question is not dealt with of how far in advance somebody needs to request permission to attend virtually. Is the law silent on that? And again, that's one of the mechanisms that you would want to come up with and place in your resolution. So the period from June 9th to June 30th. So as Tricia said, we have the state of emergency through June 14th, but in order to avail yourself of that before June 9th, when the law goes into effect, the board has to determine that any kind of declared state of emergency would interfere with their ability to have an in-person meeting. So yeah, you'd have to come up with a resolution tracking that language in the law before June 9th. In terms of June 30th, we don't know whether the state will continue the state of emergency or the city will continue the state of emergency. We'll find out towards the end of May, I guess. Well, towards the end of May for the city. Who knows for the state?
Yeah,
But,
so
yeah,
I'll
go ahead, Chris.
I'll jump in there, Adele, thanks. On the city's emergency status, for everyone's just awareness, they've been extending the emergency by 30 days, the day that emergency order would expire, since March 2020. So right now we're going to be checking to see what happens on the 28th of this month. And so far they have not been willing to communicate with anybody beforehand whether or not they will be extending it. Maybe that practice will change and they'll give people a heads up a little earlier, but that's when we're next expecting to see an executive order from City Hall. The state's executive or emergency order goes through the 14th of June. And so there is a mismatch, right? They are offset by about 2 weeks at a time right now, which is frustrating. But that's where we are. We'll be continuing to watch them as they come in, but neither has been particularly willing to give anyone a heads up until 30 minutes afterwards or the next morning. So
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll go to Xavier, and I see Barry. Barry, you'll take the last question for now. We will just pause on this. People can still ask questions, but I want to just give the council members a chance to weigh in and say hello. So Xavier, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. I'm just commuting back from a work trip, so I'll try to keep all my thoughts in my head. Thank you for answering that first question with the staggering and communication with the EOs. That was one of my questions, to find out how the mayor's office was responding. The issues with the law, I can already foresee, and I've already dealt with several of our board members who have comorbidities. And what happens in a case where, let's say, as a chair, you're aware that, say, up to half of your members have comorbidities, which would cause you to lose quorum because they do not feel comfortable despite being vaccinated. And with the uptick in the COVID levels being at a high, it was reported yesterday on 1010 wins. How can we best manage that? I have had conversations with Cicely Harris and CB10, where we've looked at possible scenarios of, okay, if we can't achieve that quorum because people are reluctant or meet that qualification with a state of emergency and not being able to conduct business in person, possibly utilizing the executive committee to act on behalf of the board in meeting in person, and then later on having a bulk ratification at an in-person meeting down the line. So that's the first thing, is that still a possibility that we could utilize. And then so I'll let you answer that, and then I'll ask my second question. I think that's for Adele.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Could you just put that a different way for me? Because
Sure. So we're going to take this up on executive committee tonight, and then hopefully pass a resolution Tuesday. However, I can foresee a lot of our membership being unwilling or uncomfortable to attend in person because of existing health conditions, although they cannot or may not choose to disclose because of HIPAA or their own personal reasons, which would eliminate the possibility of achieving quorum. Can the executive committee, in that regard, if meet in person, to then act on behalf of the will of the board, and then later on down the line, have the full board meet and ratify those positions taken, similar to what we did at the onset of 2020?
Well, what you would be talking about is a full-on, like you have to justify an emergency meeting to substitute for a full board meeting, and I don't know that would fly.
Okay.
But in terms of people just not wanting to come to a meeting, that's going to be a problem. Right now, it's not a problem because we're still in the state of emergency, so you'll be okay through the 14th at least. But people are going to have under the law, and you have to set up your criteria, but it cannot be, I just don't feel like coming. Not under the current the clear language of this law. That's not going to fly. So people have to explain to whoever's going to make the decision, to the secretary, to the chair, whatever, how they meet the criteria that the board has developed. And it obviously can't be, I just don't feel like it. Whether or not your resolution sets out rules that say, certain parts of what they tell us can be kept confidential, and we're just going to use euphemisms, health criteria is what we put in the minutes. That's up to you. You have to develop that in your reso. But it can't be just, I don't feel like it. And that's going to be a problem. Yeah, is persuading, obviously, if all the emergencies are not renewed and we're back into a normal state, it's going to be a problem. Convincing people that, once again, they should attend in-person meetings.
All right, thank you. That's helpful. We'll bring that to Yes, it does make sense. I think our larger question is the fairness of it, because some people I could see raising that once the quorum is achieved, the rest can stay virtual. And I know that's going to be an issue raised by a lot of the membership. The second part is the challenge of us personally at CB11 holding hybrid meetings. We are down in ADM. And so we only have 2 staff members. So being able to conduct a hybrid meeting, regardless of having an owl or not, will pose an additional challenge for us. So I think we're facing the reality of potentially either being all or nothing. It's either completely virtual if we can stay in EO, or we'd have to be in person and find some navigatable path. So I don't know what advice could be offered, but Adele, if I could speak with you after the fact about the sensitivity issues with qualifying non-attendance or being virtual on the medical side. I appreciate that. So, I mean, that's
Sure,
that's my
sure.
2 cents.
Yeah,
I'm
and
sorry if
we're
I'm not
gonna,
clear today.
no, and hopefully we'll get, be able to get a little more clarity. And as, get maybe a few examples of what is okay and what isn't, as, as Steve suggested, so we can help you guys out a little more.
If I can
Thank
jump in
you.
there too, I do think it's an extraordinarily important point that there will be a higher burden on some boards than others, just due to their board membership. It is something we're working on with both the legislature and the governor's office to try to find a little more breathing room on the quorum component. I will be perfectly honest, I am not particularly hopeful that that'll happen this session, but it is something we're working on. And so to the extent that there are some serious concerns about, having a very, very small margin of error here, it would be helpful for us to know. And so certainly don't hesitate to reach out to me, and it's going to be something that I will continue to include in my conversations with the governor's office on that. I think it's just helpful for them to know.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. We're gonna go to Barry for a final question on this. And then I had seen our special guests from SEIU in the attendees, but now I don't see them anymore. So hopefully they'll come back, but we will also hear from our, I think, Councilmember Menon and Councilmember Rayo are here, and then we'll continue the conversation after that. So go ahead, Barry.
I had a very quick question, which is, so we're holding our public hearing tonight on this in a hybrid format and then voting to authorize a hybrid format. I think that remains covered by the virtual guidelines outlined in the public meetings law portion of the state budget that allowed us to do this for 2 months after they passed. But we can meet in this in a hybrid format to adopt a resolution authorizing a hybrid format if the hybrid format complies with virtual meeting requirements, right?
You can meet, you can't meet in a hybrid format after June 9th, unless you've passed the resolution with all your criteria.
But tonight, May 19th.
Tonight, yeah, tonight the law's not in effect, so do what
Great.
you want.
Cool. That's
And
just double checking.
I think that's why most of the boards are working pretty hard to get this in place before the 9th.
Yep, that's us. So thank you, Adele.
Okay, great. So we are just going to pause this for a few minutes. I see Vilma is back on. So Eric, if you don't mind bringing in Vilma, but we're going to first go to our 2 council members who are here with many thanks. So first we'll go to Julie Menon.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. So I'm just going to give a brief update on some things that we've been working on in District 5. So just yesterday, Councilmember Lynn Shulman and I released a letter that was signed by 26 other women council members, urging the mayor to take 2 specific actions regarding the infant formula shortage. First of all, we're calling on the mayor to suspend procurement around infant formula, which would allow the city to immediately purchase infant formula and address the shortages. Secondly, we're asking him to send out DCWP inspectors to inspect for price gouging. This is a very serious issue and the city needs to act immediately. So I'm thrilled with the fact that 28 women on the council signed this letter, and we're in conversations right now with the mayor's office on it. I'm very happy to say that I launched a project in my district, and the borough president was at it, to provide free broadband access to NYCHA residents. I launched this in Holmes Isaacs in our district, and basically how the project works is we negotiated with Verizon and Spectrum to offer a new low-cost plan. We paired it with a federal subsidy that gives all NYCHA residents $30 a month off of broadband. And we got NYCHA to pre-qualify and pre-certify all the residents. This is an unbelievable program. I'm incredibly proud of it. We're doing a briefing with CWA for other Thank you, Keisha, for other elected officials, and it's completely scalable, so everyone can do it in their district. So CWNA are hosting our briefing on Friday for elected officials, but if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to address that. The other brief issues that I wanted to mention is we launched a new community garden in Lexington houses. We have such a dearth of open space in our district, so I'm very focused on how we can launch more open space in our district. And the last thing I'll mention is just on the legislative front. I'm not going to go through all the legislation that we have introduced, but I want to highlight one particular bill because I chair the Small Business Committee and the City Council. I have a bill that now has a supermajority of sponsors, and it is to provide a one-stop shop portal for all city agency permits. So basically, if you own a small business or if you want to open up a small business, it consolidates every single city agency permit, whether it be the fire department, sanitation department, consumer affairs, into one website and one app. And so I do expect that we will have a hearing on that shortly. And I think it's going to be a real game changer for small businesses to cut through bureaucracy and red tape. So there's a lot more I could say, but I just want to highlight those few issues. Thank you.
Councilmember, before you leave, Barry Weinberg had a question about a specific program that you mentioned.
Sure. Hi, Barry.
Hi, how are you, council member?
Good to see
I
you.
was just wondering for the I think it was the Isaac houses where you were rolling out the subsidized broadband. What
Yeah.
was the program or subsidy used in conjunction with?
It's the ACC. So the ACC is a program that is launched by the FCC that provides $30 a month off, not only to NYCHA residents, but really to low income people all across the country. And it's kind of shocking that no one has been taking advantage of this ACC. Most people are not aware of it. So basically what we did is we paired the ACC with a new plan that we negotiated directly with Verizon and Spectrum that was under $30 a month. So when you pair the $30 a month off plus a new plan we negotiated, it brings residents' cost to zero. So it's a huge game changer. It's also very high-speed connectivity plans. We launched it in both Isaacs and in homes. We partnered with the Isaac Center as our community partner on it because it's very important to have a community partner. But I'm more than happy to provide any additional details. And again, this is scalable. So I would really encourage people to launch this in their respective districts.
Who at your office should I reach out to about launching?
Sure, Cameron Kaufman. We're doing an elected official briefing, and we're actually trying to create a toolkit so that we try to make it as easy as possible for people to launch in their districts. But Cameron Kaufman can definitely give you information on that.
Amazing, thank you. I'll call to get the details on Friday.
Okay, sounds great.
Great. I think that's all the questions, but just wanted to flag for you and for Councilmember Abreu, our Borough Board in June is going to be moved to June 2nd, and we would love for you to attend because we will be passing a resolution at that time, is the hope. So we'll share the details with your office.
Okay, thanks. It's a stated day, and there are a bunch of different rallies that we're already committed to, so I'm going to be a maybe, but thank you so much.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome, Councilmember Abreu.
Thank you, Trisha. Barry, happy birthday. I got the notice this morning on Facebook.
You.
Yeah. And I've spoken to, Julie, we've spoken about that Wi-Fi program, broadband program. And yeah, I'm happy to work with Barry on that as well. It's something I think we could bring to NYCHA, especially in our district. I'll keep it brief. A few weeks ago, we had a early Mother's Day event at the Forum on 125th, which was well attended. We're excited about that. This Saturday, we're having a shredding event together with Senator Robert Jackson and Assemblyman Danny O'Donnell, which we would encourage the word to be spread on that. Today, I have a hearing focused on the Clean Slate Act, which is going to be very important to make sure that folks who have convictions are able to obtain housing and employment without discrimination. And also, we are excited to also be hearing home rules today on pensions, so that members, police and fire officers are able to access their pensions much earlier. But also, this would also impact the carpenters and operating engineers, something we're very excited for, very labor friendly. But in the next week or two, we're still waiting to get the details from Albany. But it seems that my committee on home rules will also be working on the speed cameras to make sure that we have them 24/7, which we're excited about. And we will be getting more information on that in the next week. But it will be very important to reduce fatalities and escalating penalties for repeat speeders. So, which we have found, not only we, I mean, it's well known that this is a highly effective practice. So thank you so much, Borough Board, for allowing me to speak today. Always grateful to the Manhattan Borough President's team and to the Manhattan Borough President himself. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councilmember. Vilma, we have been trying to send you a link to become a panelist, but we keeps getting denied. And I'm sorry, I can't message you privately to see if you can do this, but we're gonna try again to send you another, oh, there you are. Great, welcome, and you are muted.
I kept rejecting it, thinking I'm not supposed to be a panelist, so thank you.
You're fine, and thank you for joining us. So thank you, members of Borough Board, for being a little flexible with our agenda, but I did want to just take a moment to welcome Vilma Linares from 1199 SEIU. We had the opportunity to hear from members of SEIU talking about a, broadly speaking, a workforce development program that they have already launched, but are moving into Manhattan. And they had asked us for a few minutes today just to talk about the program and give you a heads up of what's coming, hopefully to many of our boards. So with that, Vilma, I'll kick it off to you.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. We had a little bit of miscommunication on whether we were able to get on the agenda or not. But again, my name is Vilma Linares Vaughn. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the 1199 Training and Employment Funds. We have had a pilot program that we started in the Bronx, which basically seeks to increase the number of Spanish-speaking, linguistically and culturally competent direct caregivers. And we started the program about 10 years ago in the Bronx. And we are now, with the support and assistance of Presbyterian, we are expanding it to Upper Manhattan and the other health systems within Manhattan, as the problem exists there's too. It's a pilot in that we started with the Spanish language because it seemed to be the higher need area or language, but once we knew the success, we wanted to eventually expand it not only geographically but also linguistically to other languages that are prominent within the city of New York. We believe, and we have data to prove that when you have a patient population that has direct caregivers that speak their language and culture, it increases the positive outcomes healthcare wise. So we are seeking funding. We have had funding in the past from City Council through the Speaker Discretionary Fund and also through the Bronx Borough delegation. And we are asking for your support in the expansion into Manhattan. Dr. Rafael Antigua from Presby is part of our team. And if you recall, Dennis Rivera, who used to be the president of 1199, is our co-chair of this initiative. It used to be called the Bronx Healthcare Learning Collaborative, and now it's just the Healthcare Learning Collaborative in order to be inclusive and not just specific to one borough because of the expansion. So we've graduated more than 3,689 students. The reason why we seek City Council, because we do have collective bargaining money, is that we want to be able to recruit members of the community into the program. So if someone speaks Spanish and they have already some training and they want to become a registered nurse or a respiratory therapist or a patient care technician, we can provide them the funds if we have non-restricted money. Collective bargaining restricts us only to 1199 members. Funding from the council in the past has allowed us to recruit non-1199 members. So twofold. One, it helps to have more direct caregivers that are linguistically competent, but we also believe that bringing people from lower paying jobs into higher paying jobs increases the overall health, economic health of the community. So that is if you have any questions, if you want any more specific information, I'd love to provide it. I understand there's very limited time to speak, so go ahead.
Thank you so much, Vilma. Can you just, I think that we had heard this, but I believe the program expanding would impact CB9, CB7, CB12, and maybe CB10. Is that accurate, or am I, from your planning standpoint, is that, are those the boards that you're thinking about?
Yeah, and we have a written 2-pager that I can send to the members of the board. And I think Lily sent a letter that included the 1-pager or 2-pager that is more specific on who would be affected.
Great. So I will make sure, I know you have another question here from CB11, but Barry, Cicely, Sally representing CB12, and Stephen, I think that, just to flag for you guys, and maybe I'll make sure that you guys have all this information, particularly in case you want to invite Vilma and her team to come to one of your committees. I think that might be great to get more specific questions as well. Xavier?
Yes, thank you very much for presenting. I would love for you to send your information across and come present to CB11, as we have a very large Spanish-speaking population, and also known as El Barrio and La Cuna. So,
Yes.
So please send it along, because I think that would be great to have upward mobility with jobs. The question I have, and maybe I missed it just because I'm driving, does this then offer the opportunity for joining 1199, or is this like in my industry we call it a Taft-Hartley, being admitted after a period of time?
Right. So the part of the program that we fund through collective bargaining money, it's existing 1199 members. The non-restricted funding that we're seeking from City Council allows us to recruit members of the community. And once we can place them in, and we have such a great demand, as you know, we have such a shortage in all of healthcare. Once they complete their studies, they will be placed in 1199 jobs. So there is an opportunity to become an 1199 member. The first thing, though, is trying to get non-restricted funds that just doesn't allow, that allows us to recruit from the community that is less restrictive than the collective bargaining money we get through normal channels. So yes, there's an opportunity for education. And as you heard from the titles, most of these are professional 4-year degrees. So it's quite a commitment, one from the individual and from us on the funding. If we accept you into the program, we're committing to pay for your education for 4 years of whatever, to become an RN or respiratory therapist. So it's not a quick fix kind of program. It's a long-term trajectory. But in the end of the education, you do get placed in 1199 institution, such as Monty or Presby or Maimonides, and like wherever there are opportunities. Although right now we have such a shortage everywhere that we are in almost in a scramble. Especially RNs are just in high demand in all whatever language they can speak. But in particular with COVID, we saw that language, as you know, a lot of people that wound up hospitalized with COVID, they were not able to see family members, and to have someone that they could communicate with in their language when no one else from their family or friends were allowed in the hospitals was so critical. And we had such a high demand for Spanish speaking, and that's true of all healthcare from what I can tell. So yes, it would lead to potentially an 1199 job, but also, where our objective is to try to support healthcare wherever the needs are, if we have the people to do it with. So we wouldn't exclude a non-1199 shop, but obviously our objective is to support our healthcare systems that we work with already. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. If you please send along your information, I'd love to have you come present to CB11. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Vilma, would you prefer, who is the best person to have as the contact? And I'm happy to connect you directly with these boards after this.
So my executive assistant, Anna Mueller,
Oh, great.
is for scheduling purposes. And she's the one that was in contact with someone here to get me on here.
Perfect.
And then I'm working very closely with Lily Carino with the union. So those two people are key for me to connect with.
Okay, great. And thank you so much. I'm happy to be able to introduce you to not just the Uptown boards, but all of our boards. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Just moving on, before we jump back into our discussion, I wanted to just see if the council member Gail Brewer would like to share a few words, or if we should continue. Gail, are you with us? Oh, she may be away. That's okay. We can come back. Okay, folks. I want to just reopen up the discussion again about open meetings. I know that we had a number of questions here, and everybody, it feels like most of the boards are kind of moving along on this. Does anybody have any additional questions about the specifics of the open meeting guidelines and how their board is planning on moving forward past June 9th / June 14th? Tammy and Paul. So we'll go with Tammy first and then Paul. Go ahead.
So it dawns on me that I should just confirm, because we're planning on going down the path, and I'm hoping I'm on the right path. Since there is a bit of ambiguity between the city and state of emergencies, is it legally okay? What I thought we would be able to do is, instead of having to go back to the well 1,010 times, is to pass a resolution tonight in our executive committee, and it would outline specifically a separate one about the regular open meetings law, changed law, and the expiration date of 2024, and to have a line that says in there, this resolution takes precedent and works through X date, July 2024, unless this, or in perpetuity for as long as the rules exist. And then do the same kind of a thing that outline that the city state of emergency ends on May 28th, may or may not be extended. The state ends on June 8th and may or may not be extended. And our ability to function will be with as long as there is a state of emergency in place by the city or the state. And that then prevents us from having to come back to the well 2 to 3 times and outlines an if statement.
Yeah, I believe that's okay. I mean, I don't know how many boards are invoking the 2024 issue, because that's so far away. But yeah, that's, my advice. I think a lot of boards are just making them, what the law says is the board has to make a determination that, a state of emergency declared by the state or the city would interfere with their ability, or the condition that, at least in the state of emergency, would interfere with their ability to have a fully in-person meeting. So as long as you put that in there, I think you can avail yourself of that.
Thank you.
Things change.
Thanks. We'll go to Paul and then Russell.
Just be quick, just for clarity, the executive order went to June 14th, so we're allowed to be virtual all the way up until June 14th, correct?
So long as you have determined before June 9th, you have determined that the governor's, what led to the state of emergency interferes with yours. So that's what we were talking about before.
Right.
You have to, under the law is very specific that it says the board has to, or the body has to determine that the emergency interferes with their ability to have a fully in-person meeting.
Copy. Thank you.
Russell?
Muted.
Sorry. So I joined late, so I apologize. But I just want to make sure, because we have a meeting, a full board meeting on June 8th. where I think we'll be able to do everything that we need to do. But I just want to, and so I apologize if this is repetitive of some of the stuff that we've already covered, but I just want to make sure I understand. So if at our June 8th board meeting, we need to pass a resolution, or we could pass a resolution that says that as a board, we've determined that the emergency that has led to various suspensions of the open meetings law, essentially still pertains and interferes with our ability to have in-person meetings for the remainder of June. And if we pass a resolution that says that, that means that we can stay remote as a full board and otherwise for the remainder of June. Is that right? Or is there more that we need to do?
No, through June 14th. Again, as Chris discussed, we don't know that the city is renewing its state of emergency monthly. So on May 28th, we may or may not get a renewed state of emergency through the end of June. The governor's state of emergency only goes through June 14th. So, so whenever there's a state of emergency declared either by the governor or the chief executive of New York City, then you're okay with having made that determination. But they don't give us a heads up about what's going to happen either June 14th or May 28th.
I see. So nothing that okay. So in the absence of any action by the state, the best we can do is to stay virtual through the 14th.
Yes.
Okay. So we're really talking about.
Yes. If the mayor doesn't act, to continue and the governor.
Okay, so we're just, okay, got it. Sorry about that. All right, so we're talking about 6 days, basically. So if we pass something before June 8th, we buy ourselves an extra 6 days.
Well, or you're putting yourself in place to avail yourself of the continuing emergency.
Got it. I see. Okay.
I mean, just to be clear, like with all of these extensions, we haven't found out about them until the very last minute that they happen. So, unfortunately, it just prepares you for the future.
So you also want to include essentially catch-all language in the event that the additional emergency gets. I got it. Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, Adele, you wanted to?
I mean, again, this is not the best written law, but the language says in a way that's subject to weird interpretation. The language is that the body can avail itself of going completely virtual when a state of emergency is declared, if they have determined. So, I suppose some people could make it an argument that determination has to be made each time there's a state of emergency. I think that's kind of ridiculous. But if you determine now that the condition makes it interferes with your fully in-person meetings, I think that's okay.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sure you can probably see why we took all of the Borough Service Cabinet meeting last month to discuss this in detail, and frankly, why we wanted to dedicate so much time to this meeting to discuss it. I know that you all are doing the work, and I'm extremely grateful that you are being proactive about this and trying to get your hearings done and craft these resolutions. I want to just reiterate again, if you need any additional questions answered, if there are things that are unclear, you all have my cell phone number at this point. You all have my email address. You should have Adele's contact information. I just want to reiterate that we're all here to help you get through this and to help you, again, get your board in shape for whatever comes after the 9th/the 14th, through the summer and fall. So just keep us posted. And again, I got an email about this again, but please keep us posted also on the costs associated with your going hybrid so that we can best advocate for you. I want to transition, and of course you still are welcome to ask more questions on this, but I do want to transition a little bit to what this means for Borough Board. So we too are subject to the same open meetings law changes that every board is. And so the question came up about how this board might operate in a hybrid fashion. Borough Board, if you don't know this, has bylaws that have not been updated to the best of my judgment since 2013. And in the bylaws, it outlines that the voting members of Borough Board are the borough president, a chair from every board, and the council members, which are, as you know, the folks who we, unless you're a special invited speaker, generally allowed to speak and participate in Borough Board meetings. In order to, in our conversations internally, in discussing how we could possibly adopt a hybrid model, which we do believe creates the most accessibility, and virtual would be wonderful, but in the ability for us to create a hybrid model, how we would accomplish this. And because of just the complications as you all have seen with council members and their schedules, and board members and their schedules, it seems frankly impossible to accomplish unless we actually enacted a proxy voting system where we would allow for I think specifically about the council members, but I also think in terms of just even our board members sometimes, not to hold a huge example, but I think Craig's here on behalf of Vicky this morning. It happens from time to time, and it would be, I think, useful for us to do this. So if you can kind of see my line of thinking in this, in order to accomplish hybrid, we'd have to first accomplish, set out kind of clearer and maybe updated rules on who is allowed to vote or whose presence is allowed to vote, and that means opening up our bylaws, which has not, again, been done to the best of our detection work since 2013, which is the bylaws that we sent you in a Word document. Drawing from there's a lot with those bylaws, and if you had a chance to review them, I think it's safe to say that that we could add a lot to them to update them, and I think that it's a worthwhile endeavor to do. However, because of the timeliness of just all of us trying to get through this hybrid system, what I'd like to propose is that we just kind of try to focus this initial changes to bylaws just to the proxy kind of question. So I wanted to, this doesn't require a resolution today, but drawing from our bylaws, a copy of the bylaws plus a proposal of the changes in language needs to be physically mailed to everybody. So next week, I will be physically mailing a copy of the bylaws and proposed changes to the language, which will be really focused on three things. One, grammatical mistakes, just because it kills me to see grammatical errors in the bylaws. Two, changes and a change in language proposing a proxy voting system. And I will read you, I think, what we're kind of throwing around right now. And three, because you just heard my sarcasm about having to physically mail you something, changing it so that in the future, we can email you proposed changes to bylaws. And again, this doesn't really fix all of the bylaws problems, but I think that it sets us up in the future for a better and more efficient way of getting our house in order over here. So with regards to the language, we are going to propose something along the lines of a member may attend and vote by proxy when extenuating circumstances prevent attendance. And in the case of a community board chair, the designated proxy should be a member of the respective community board's executive committee, or if you don't have what you call an executive committee, maybe like a vice chair or something like that. This would, again, I think, allow us to maintain that quorum piece. And we say extenuating circumstances because we still I don't know about you, but I greatly value the ability to talk with all of our chairs on a monthly basis and see all of your faces on a monthly basis. So we, would like it to stay that we don't prefer that somebody else become the borough board proxy person all the time, but would really like to keep it so that our preference is for the council member to show up, our preference is for the chair to show up, but this does give everybody a little bit more flexibility in that way. So that is kind of where we are broadly proposing. I wanted to open it up for anybody to have questions about it. It's not official yet because again, I have to physically mail it to you. And then we have to let 60 days go by, which is a very long time before we can actually vote on this. So we won't be actually voting on this until July. But I did want to just bring it up and explain why on the cusp of community board appointments and on the cusp of hybrid, we are also deciding to crack open the bylaws. But it's really out of necessity. And I think that it will ultimately put us in a better position in the long term. Yeah, Barry.
I just wanted to ask, I know proxy voting is sometimes a contentious provision. And I wanted to ask if there were any concerns either by Adele or any other folks about, authorizing proxy voting and the fear that it becomes the default rather than the exception.
I'll just say that the charter is silent on it for the borough board. It merely states that there will be one and who the members are. So, the charter is much more specific about, voting and presence for community boards, but it doesn't preclude proxy voting. I think what Tricia just pointed out is that we don't want it to become, all proxy or, predominantly proxy, because chair's presence is important, but there's no legal bar that we could see.
We don't take the step lightly, and I have been warned by many people, frankly, that cracking open the bylaws is something not for the faint of heart. So I don't do so without a good sense of wanting to be sure that we answer the questions that need to be asked and really make thoughtful consideration of this. So, I would just ask that you do keep a lookout in your mail for a copy of the bylaws and a copy of the drafted language. There is a nice healthy 60-day window. I am more than happy to, make this open up discussion about this at the next meeting too, for us to continue to chew this over. And, again, just to lay out our plan here, the plan would be for June, and you probably already heard this, but it is worth saying again, we are going to keep our June meeting right now on June 2nd, which is a different date than normal. And we did that again for ease to get a vote in, hopefully with a resolution on hybrid. So the plan would be for the next meeting on June 2nd for this borough board to vote on hybrid. We will have a hearing attached to that, just like everybody else has to. We will, I hope, vote on a hybrid model, and then in July we will vote, and unless we will vote on this bylaws, and I suppose we will be in that hybrid model in July unless the executive orders is expanded. So keep in mind that piece too. So it's going to be a very, very focused June and July meetings, if that makes sense, and trying to make sure everybody's on the same page with everything. But I hope you would agree after you see those bylaws that we actually have a lot of work to do on those bylaws, and this is really just a good step in the right direction with this. So just to remind everybody again, June 2nd is our meeting. I know the executive order has been extended to June 14th, but I think it's just safe to do our meeting on June 2nd right now. Councilmember Mennon's point about it being a stated meeting, we'll recognize and we'll, try to figure that out. But right now it's on June 2nd. We will be virtual at that time. And then, we'll see what happens in July. Okay. So I think that those are the last kind of points we wanted to make on open meetings and bylaws. So unless there's anything else from anybody else, we're gonna move the agenda along and go to chair reports. And it is May, so we're gonna start with CB5.
Thanks, Tricia, and sorry I had to drop off a little bit. I had a PTA meeting that I had to go to as well this morning. So I'm pinch hitting for Vicky, who could not be here today. Just a couple of quick things. The Open Restaurants Task Force Chair for CB5 reported on our task force comprehensive 32-page report. The board will be commenting on the developing progress of the city's proposed permanent open restaurants program by the mayor and DOT, and will be voting on the task force recommendations in the coming months. We also voted to approve an application to modify the North Penthouse at 141 Fifth Avenue and the installation of 2 marquees at 31 West 27th. The board also approved an application for a distinctive sidewalk at 2 Penn Plaza, a New York Rangers special event in Bryant Park for viewing of their playoff games, a promotional event in Madison Square Park, and the annual Bryant Park Corporation and Union Square partnership rosters of summer programming. We did support the council's legislation introduced by our borough president regarding the need for public toilets in New York City, as well as a second resolution urging the city to provide more public bathrooms in the city. A resolution from the Transportation Environment Committee asking for approval to release the joint study of intercity curbside bus practices was also approved by the board and can be found on our website. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Craig. I don't believe CB6 was able to join us. We'll go to CB7.
You skipped it. I wasn't quite ready, so I'm ready now. No, I'm okay. A handful of things. First and foremost, I want to just acknowledge our HHS, our Health and Human Services Committee. Shelley Fine did an incredible job presenting a resolution on food insecurity, which I think continues to be one of our top needs, and it was quite extensive. And certainly we can share that, but I thought we continue to sort of work on that here on CB7, and I think the work coming out of HHS is very, very commendable. I think the number one issue from a topic perspective is amongst our preservation committee. I think I had mentioned it last borough board, but it certainly has continued to take off. 165 West 86th of the West Park Presbyterian Church is applying to remove landmark status. So we had a public hearing. There was, I think, a total 300 plus people on a virtual. So that could be a factoid if people want to talk about virtual meetings, but it was quite attended. And that will continue on. We ended up passing a resolution that did not support their application. That'll be voted on full board. But for those community boards, that preservation is important and vibrant, and this topic has never come on. It may be something to take notice on. Third thing I just say is bylaws seems to be the topic of the month, and we are doing our own bylaws assessment. Want to acknowledge Susan Schwartz, who's the co-chair of the task force, who's been diligently for quite a long pushing through some amendments to or an updated version of our bylaws. It is quite the controversial topics. It's been incredibly talked about and with lots of attendance, but I think that Susan will be able to push that through. Or I hope, I should say, that we will have a full vote on that, and we'll see how that plans out, I should say. And the last thing, I just wanted to acknowledge the Manhattan Borough President, Mark Levine, the entire office, and specifically Tricia and Eric on what I think is a very valiant job in terms of the reappointments. I was very proud to see the diversity in our new appointments. Unfortunately here that we had a few ones that weren't appointed. And I think it's a really thankless, tough job, but I'm just incredibly impressed with the job that the whole office did, as well as Tricia and Eric, and want to thank them for their service in this matter because it's quite thankless. So I wanted to thank them personally.
Great, thanks, Stephen. We'll go to CB8.
Thank you. So we had an eventful board meeting last night. So we also welcomed new board members and thanked departing board members. but we really threw our new board members right into the fire sort of early on here, and they've been doing great. And we passed a resolution in our full board last night relating to open restaurants. So it had been taken up as a joint item by a number of committees, and in a meeting of our transportation committee, I really have to acknowledge transportation co-chair Craig Lader, who put together a very comprehensive and helpful list of everything that we know so far about what DOT has said in terms of what they are likely to do when it comes to the permanent open restaurants program. And so we felt it was important to provide recommendations on what the rules should be before DOT issues its formal draft plan. And, with the benefit of this list of what it looks like they're planning to do, we were able to go point by point and come up with recommendations on what we like and what we would like to see changed and what we wanted to see specified. So ultimately came up with, I think, a fairly comprehensive set of resolutions on that. And so, I was very proud of our board, and hopefully DOT takes it all to heart when they receive it. So that was one item. And then in addition, we have had an issue in our district, an organization called the Knickerbocker Grays, which some of you may be familiar with. It is one of the oldest youth organizations in the city. It's over 120 years old and has long been headquartered at the 7th Regiment Armory in our district. And recently, they were asked by the Armory Conservancy to leave that site that they have been in for over a century. And the community is very concerned about this. And I do want to thank Borough President Levine and our other elected officials for standing with the Grays. And so that's right. Yeah. So Keisha just noted. So they're a very important part of the community, but not only represent our community, but they have members from all over the city. So very important in the community that they continue to be a part of our community. And so we passed a resolution in support of them, urging that they be permitted to stay in the Armory, and hopefully the Armory will allow that. And we've also asked the state to grant them a direct lease to allow them to do that. So that is it for my report.
Thanks, Russell. We'll go to CB9.
All right, I will endeavor to keep mine brief. We had another busy month that included a rally in front of City Hall in opposition to the HPD's attempts to remove buildings from the tenant interim lease program, the TIL program, and transfer them to for-profit developers to be rehabbed under the Affordable Neighborhood Cooperative Program, ANCP. Community Board 9, 5 years ago, actually almost the day, passed a resolution calling for a halt on transfers of buildings out of TIL. These are city-owned properties, residential buildings that are managed for free by the tenants. And the city has allowed them to get into a state of complete disrepair when they are obligated to rehabilitate them and sell them to the tenants for $250 an apartment. So we joined Councilmember Richardson Jordan in a rally in opposition of that. And I testified with Cicely's blessing about the proposal for 5 of the buildings that are just over the border in CB10. But this is something we've been working on for a long time and is very concerning. And the same things are happening to buildings in our district, which has had the highest number of TIL buildings in the city. We are continuing to work to create a council member-led process for HDFCs to apply for Article 11 property tax abatements. These are property tax abatements that the city can grant to HDFCs. Currently, the process is mostly controlled by HPD and then kind of voted up or down by the council, but there's nothing to stop the council from having its own process independent of HPD. HPD in the past has been hostile to HDFC cooperatives seeking these tax abatements. Our Cannabis Task Force held a great or co-sponsored a great event with CB10s. and is continuing to meet and has drafted a resolution expressing concern about certain provisions in the proposed cannabis regulations by the Cannabis Control Board that we will be voting on tonight. In particular, certain provisions requiring documented financial statements of a profitable business for the past, I think, 5 years or 2 years, and certain capital requirements will probably serve to prevent individuals in our community most affected by prior criminalization of cannabis from opening licensed businesses. And that's something that runs counter to the intent of the law that established and legalized marijuana, and is something we're concerned about. We're also excited that with the support of Borough President Levine and Councilmember Abreu and Assemblyman O'Donnell and Assemblywoman Dickens and Senators Robert Jackson and Cordell Clare, it looks like the MTA will be committing to put elevators at the 125th Street 1 station, which is a really big deal. We do not have any elevator accessible stations north of 96th Street on the 1 until very far uptown. And so this is huge for us. I also do want to thank Tricia and the entire Borough President's team also for the thankless task of managing the community board application process and the appointments. I know you spent a lot of time. I do want to call out, though, we saw more non-reappointments for no stated reason than in the past, and this, you know, is going to impact our ability to function. We're losing our secretary and possibly one of our committee co-chairs, and you know, I don't have to say to everyone on this call how hard it is to find members who, in addition to volunteering their time to attend these meetings, will also volunteer to go further beyond that and take on more work of either taking minutes or attending additional meetings or planning their committee meetings. So I am just concerned that, you know, unless there's good cause or attendance issues or other things, that people doing the thankless work and helping our boards function, you know, don't get not reappointed for lack of affirmative reasons. And then tonight we're voting on our open meetings law resolution. I did send it to all the other chairs in case they wanted to read it, and just so we can share what's going on. And then finally, we are renewing a push that was supposed to happen in March of 2020 to reopen our Children's Foundation, which provides youth development activities and is pretty critical to our community. That original effort got sidelined by other things that happened in March of 2020, but it is not something we've forgotten about. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Barry. I appreciate it. I'll talk about appointments at the very end, but I appreciate it. We'll go to next CB10.
Good morning, everyone. Tisley here for CB10. I'm sorry, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. But I do have to echo what Barry said about the reappointments. We are in the same situation where we had 11 folks not reappointed. I've been doing some calls just to kind of like soften that blow. Of course, you know, as chair, we don't have anything to really do with that at all, but it has been a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of board members that had plans that we were working on a job fair that the whole committee's gone basically for the job fair now. So it's a real task, and our treasurer was not reappointed and he was also over district needs. So there's a lot of holes there and we've got a lot of rebuilding to do. So I just echo what Barry said about that. And Tricia, I'm looking forward to what you're going to say about reappointments. But I do thank you for including us in the process as much as possible for that. Also, really quickly, again, thank you, Barry and CB 9, CB 11, Xavier and the Borough President's Office for being part of our Cannabis Forum. And I think Mar Fitzgerald from, was that CB3? CB2 came, I think, to be a support for us. It was a great success. Thank you, Keisha Sutton James, for coming out and giving remarks. The Borough President, Mark Levine, came out. It was really good. I think we had 100 people out on the open street, plus we were able to live stream it and tape it. So it was a really good event, and I just want to thank everyone for supporting us. We are continuing to have conversations about the 145 project. The Civil Rights Museum did withdraw from that project. So there is a new iteration of that project that we are talking to City Council about, our Councilwoman Christian Jordan Richardson. And we did testify at the city council that we are still looking at that proposal. There have been some of the changes that we asked for, but not all of them. So it's kind of out of our hands in the Euler process, but we are still engaged in that conversation. But I do thank the Borough President's office for keeping us engaged there. We had a great conversation with the Harlem Summer of Soul team. They came to present. I know they're going to present in Barry and Xavier's boards. I don't know if they have already. But it does sound like they have some really great events planned. I think the big event is in 2023. However, they are planning a lot of community events that are inclusive of the community, that will be free for the community, and that we will be a part of those things. So we're excited. We had Nakoa Hendricks Hendricks and Musa come and talk to us. And finally, we've had a long discussion, and the Borough President's office has been very involved in this. For a lot of the substance abuse programs on 124th. We did get some information from Mount Sinai that the CARES program will not be there. However, there will be services there, primary healthcare services, HIV/AIDS services, and they have also suggested that we could create a cab. So we're excited about that and the promise and the things that are moving there. So that's all I have from CB10.
Thanks, Cicely. We'll go to CB11. If Xavier's still able to talk, he said he may not.
I can talk, and to everyone, I apologize if I seem a little discombobulated. I'm currently in Connecticut right now, and the traffic's just awful. But I didn't want to miss this. So thank you, Cicely. Pleasure working with you and Barry and Eleazar. And as we try to advocate, I'll kind of go in a meandering fashion. Please send along that TIL resolution, Barry. We have HPD, we've invited them back to address the issues with it because when they first presented to our housing committee, they were not up to snuff when they were presenting on the ANCP. So that'd be appreciated because I know we have a fair amount of TIL as well in our neighborhood, as well as HDFCs. It'd be good to see that commitment and something we care in deep earnest. We currently, and thank you for bringing up Mount Sinai, I had a conversation with Brad Beckstrom. They are signed the lease with Orrin Everhard from Everhard Development for 101st and Lexington, where the new Children's Aid and church and Mount Sinai will be leasing half of the building to provide services that are not in competition with Children's Aid, but things such as 9/11 work and healing and other additional services. Currently, no other slated services that would be in conflict with our positions, say with methadone clinics and whatnot. They're being very respectful of that, and they did give an update about 124th as well during that conversation, which I was glad to hear. That brings us to our Open Street program, which will be rolling out either Memorial Day weekend or the weekend after. And we're working with Uptown Grand Central and Carrie King. If you don't know who Carrie King is, you're under a rock at this point. She's a phenomena, everyone and what they do. So we're working on that to get that area activated. Yes, we did have a presentation, Summer Soul, and the programming that's going to roll out yesterday at Economic Development. It was very well received. They received a letter of support, which I do not foresee any complications with it passing at full board next week. We also had Carmen, who I'm trying to remember her last name again, just driving, is that she, if you've ever been through our neighborhood and you ever see the crochet murals hanging throughout, she and her community artists are getting ready to launch one. And now that the cat's out of the bag, I can announce it. They're doing a massive one over at Art Space right near Cherry Tree Park of Sonia Sotomayor. It's a massive crochet mural that was pieced together by multiple artists. They were just given the designs, and that will come up during the Puerto Rican Day Festival in June. It is open to the public because it'll be an outside event. The other, I sent a letter after we had taken the position to renew our call for a moratorium on any additional or new services with methadone clinics and such treatments. We sent a reply letter to Commissioner Bassan asking for them to attend a public hearing. We will let you know if they do attend, because we need real and meaningful partnerships with our city agencies. And again, as many of you know, that OPC that was founded in our community and the information was withheld from the entirety of the board, and then later stated under the mayor's emergency orders right after Thanksgiving last year. So that is the summary. Oh, one last thing. Speaking of turnover, and thank you again for the level best work in getting us into appointees. We lost Elsie Encarnacion, who is now working in the Deputy Speaker's office as a senior advisor. We had our election, and now Jessica Elliott is our new vice chair, and she will still retain her position as the chair of Environment, Open Space, and Parks. And thank you for those that came in to attend our Earth Day event. And also thank you to council member Julie Menon for her work at Lexington Houses. It was beautiful to see those gardens. So that concludes my report. Anything additional, I'll submit in writing. Thank you.
Thanks, Xavier. We'll go to Sally Fisher for CB12. Sally, you're muted.
Thanks, Tricia. A huge shout out to Adele for her memo that consumed the bulk of our executive committee meeting on Monday night. We are supporting a hybrid model, given we've had a 40% increase in public participation and record attendance, public attendance at our 3 most recent public hearings. We will draft the resolution, hold a public hearing, and pass the resolution hopefully by June 9th. And we are fairly confident that we will have the technology to achieve this. We have a number of other resolutions that will be presented at our next meeting. Most important, and one that the Gail Brewer was particularly helpful on, was a resolution reiterating the requirement that New York Presbyterian reopen its 30-bed psych unit. They had filed plans to convert those beds pre-COVID. When there's an emergency order, they use those, they close the unit and use those for COVID excess capacity. Since that time, they have refused to agree or even acknowledge that the unit has to be reopened, despite a legal obligation under Article 28 certificate for Allen Hospital. So we're pushing again on that, and we would appreciate any support. And that's my report.
Thanks, Sally. We'll go, before I go to Tammy from CB1, I just want to say, actually, Sally, your comments reminded me, in addition to the kind of conversation about open meetings that we did with Borough Service Cabinet, we also did a training or a little bit of a kind of knowledge share amongst the DMs, and Tammy Lucian was obviously fantastic and like led the kind of conversation with us in terms of using tech for hybrid. So I would highly encourage you to tell your district managers if they're, you know, as you continue to work your way through hybrid, they can either check in with me and I could connect them with Lucian, or they can check in with our borough service. I think we recorded that meeting. Maybe I would have to double check, but regardless, and Russell, I have to tell you, Will also was part of that conversation, but the two of them kind of anchored a knowledge share conversation about the use of owls, the use of like where you position them, how you position them, how you set up computers. It was a very technical training that frankly, I don't think anybody on this call would very much appreciate, but we really did in terms of the district managers. So, you know, we also provided that at the last training. And with that, Tammy, I'll just hand it over to you.
Well, I thank you, and I will just say for the record, nobody's stealing Lucian, because I'll come out and find all of you. Just saying, yeah, we work, we've got a great team at CB1, and I am incredibly appreciative for how we work together as an office, and the partnerships with all the other community boards is amazing. Which brings me to my first topic. We sent a letter to the mayor's office as well as to your office as well for the borough president regarding the recent blueprint that the mayor sent out that was co-signed by CB2 and 3. We'll share it with all the other board chairs today. If any of them care to sign on or do a similar letter, we'd be happy to adjust and put it all. It basically highlights a concerning note where the administration through the Office of Nightlife in partnership with the Borough President's Office will develop standardized questionnaires and processes for liquor licensing review at each community board. We just want to reiterate that the community boards are the independent city agencies and the municipal entities that are mandated by state charter to consult in advisory capacity with the SLA. It's incredibly important for the work that over the years all of our individual boards have done for liquor license applications based on their neighborhoods, based on their communities, based on the duties that the boards have to seek to balance all the needs of a community. We do, I don't know any community board that I've met from here or any chair that doesn't seek feedback and suggestions and work to improve their neighborhood. So we want to confirm that we're ready to work with community stakeholders, create common good and improve conditions. It's always been our responsibility, and we definitely do not want to be left out of the conversations when it comes to our unique areas. So that's one. We also had to do a letter, just so everybody knows, to the administrative judge due to the redistricting of the lines, because Governor's Island, Ellis Island, and Statue of Liberty all are under the jurisdiction and connection through Manhattan Community Board 1, but the administrative judge put those 3 islands in Brooklyn, where there is no local oversight. So we shot off a letter today, last night, and we're hoping to goodness that changes. We have a small thing we'd like to sort of take a temperature and discuss. We have a lot of city permits that are done for fairs and runs and walks that are over 1,000 people, therefore centralized through one police plaza. And there's a gap in the system because the largest and most impactful runs and walks are actually determined for routes without any community input. And by the time they come to us for the SAPO permit, we're told it can't change because NYPD told us it has to be this way. There are enough days in the spring that there are no MTA bus services that are downtown at all, with combined closed subway stops, that it really does not make it equitable for the people who are not participating in the run to either leave work or come home. So it's a conversation that we're hoping that we can get a little bit of help with. Our Environmental Protection Committee is off the charts these weeks because not only are we dealing with several large-scale resiliency projects that are being considered through Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency, the Battery Park City Authority, South Battery Park, which will potentially put almost 60% of our coastline off and public space off of access in terms of staging and timing and necessity. But we are also working on with 250 Water Street. There's been some serious gaps in terms of the environmental things, and we need the working group as soon as possible to be scheduled on a regular basis. And I want to thank the Borough President's Office for signing on to the letter as well for the environmental monitor for the Manhattan Detention Center. We need to make sure that the NAC convenes back for that for the borough-based jail ASAP and is back on a regular schedule and a set schedule. It's been 8 months. And as you well know, in our area, when you're talking about large-scale projects on historic streets that are tiny with very vulnerable buildings and a vulnerable population post 9/11 living in the area, it is insane that there's a bit of a cavalier attitude towards the community's feedback, which I think is sad. Which also brings me to Cobblestone Streets. We have Cobblestone Streets that need emergency repairs. We've been asking for capital reconstruction for about a half a decade now. We have gone back and forth on this, so any kind of lift that the Borough President's Office can help with that would be fantastic. Lastly, thank you so very, very much for our new appointments and for coming back and forth. And more, I actually want to thank you for the look ahead on making sure that whether we are hybrid, we are in person, or we are fully remote, that decorum and the ability to work together as a community board respectfully is something that this borough president is prioritizing. So thank you. And with that, I close my comments.
Thanks, Tammy. Andrew's on the call. We should talk about Cobblestone Streets offline about this, so we'll follow up with you.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say we had a great conversation last night with Ed Pinkar of DOT and multiple engineers from DDC about fixing the Cobblestone Streets. And I'm happy to walk anybody through, but we really need to be on the emergency repair queue before anyone else gets hurt or dies from this.
Yeah, thank you. Janine from CB2.
Good morning. We had this month at our Transportation Committee meeting, our 2 CB2 planning fellows presented their final report, implementing a pedestrian and bike-oriented network in Manhattan CB2. They specifically looked at 6th Avenue, a major north-south artery that is a death ride for bicyclists, and Spring Street, which goes east-west and changes from commercial to small retail to big retail and back to commercial. So I'm going to share that link in the chat. It's an amazing report, and I encourage everyone to take a look at that. I think there's probably a lot of parallels that other people can use in their community. Whoops, that link didn't come. I'll put it in after I finish presenting. In terms of clean streets, we have, clean streets is important for, that's probably one of the biggest complaints we've been getting with sanitation pickups down. Councilmember Botcher and Councilmember Marte have different initiatives using funding to get additional street cleaning. There's the No Poop Ferry campaign. We got additional funding from Councilmember Marte to hire ACE from West Broadway through Mercer Street. Bottom line, we have a massive influx of shoppers and tourists that is bringing sales tax, hotels tax, and supporting retail and hospitality industries. And we're not seeing the city spending appropriate funding on that to make sure that the streets are clean, and even though the income's coming in. So just want to sort of elevate that. Separately, we are asking for street cleaning schedules and cleaning for streets that are not subject to alternate side of the street parking. Section 8 housing, we have one Section 8 housing building in our community. It's a very large building, 153 family sized apartments, 1 and 2 bedrooms. And that affordability had been in the process of expiring, and it was extended. There's been continuous concern with the about the new owners. Everybody's getting new kitchens, half a new kitchen, just the bottom shelves, not the top shelves, and new bathrooms, and everyone's nervous. So I'm thrilled that we have a council member who's really looking out for these people. I attended a tenants meeting that they had last week or 2 weeks ago. But I would love to, if any other board members have Section 8 tenants and issues, I'd love to sort of reach out to you. In terms of open restaurants, there's continued lack of enforcement. There's one particular restaurant we inquired about, has had 4 cease and desist letters this spring, but no changes. So if I'm a restaurant and I just get a letter and I don't have to do anything, I'm going to continue not to do anything. And if a stroller couldn't get by on the sidewalk, somebody with a wheelchair, there's real accessibility issues there. And I think everyone probably heard in the news, we had, thanks to hybrid meetings or remote meetings, we had hundreds of people attending meetings the last few months about a shelter in Chinatown. The city canceled plans for the 231 Grand Street shelter, citing union issues. But I did want to just talk about how we can get more data and transparency out there. I attended an event for Jericho Project this week. It's a privately run organization that basically provides housing for substantially lower price points than the city does. And they provided their financial information. Meanwhile, we go to the city. The city used to rank providers. The most recent public ranking is from fiscal year 2014. And the city has aggregate data from providers from 2022, but no individual data. So, I guess we would just like to push for more transparency on that, so people can, people have all these theories and assumptions, and I think it would be helpful to have some facts out there. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Janine. And last but not least, we have Paul from CB3.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Just a couple of things. Just to talk about what Janine was talking about. The 47 Madison shelter was canceled on our end as well. I know our Human Services Committee took that up a couple of weeks ago and wrote a resolution about, the disappointment and about losing that safe haven shelter. They also wrote a resolution on the sweeps that were going on 9th Street and with the NYPD and right by Chadas and the homeless encampments there and the use of it and everything like that. So there was the sweeps there, 47 Madison, and there was a homelessness event in June. So a homeless event serving and supporting our families, youth who are experiencing homelessness on June 2nd. For our Human Services Committee, there Citizens Committee for Children, Henry Street Settlement, the Department of Education, and the Door will be presenting at that event. And that is all I have for us. I know I'm the last one, so.
You're good. Thanks, Paul. Okay, folks, I was still hoping that the president was going to be able to join us. I think that he's still on his ride, which I can only imagine was a little slower this morning because of the rain. So I think that Keisha, our deputy borough president, though, is here and has been doing a lot of work specifically on cannabis education, which I know we wanted to discuss anyways and give you an update on. So I think, oh, and I see, sorry, Keisha, before that, I see Councilmember Gail Brewer is on. So we'll go to Councilmember first and then to Keisha.
Thank you very much. Things that are happening in the city council. One is obviously in the budget, and obviously it's not passed yet, but things that I think will be on everyone's agenda. One is the sanitation budget. And I do think as time goes on, we may end up with more litter basket pickups, which would be fantastic. I think that the commissioner of sanitation is going to work either with the community boards, elected officials, with all of the individuals who are participating in cleaning up the area. So that's something that you might want to ask for. And then on organics, so far, the mayor has suggested that it is in the schools and that parents would have a bin at the school to be able to put their organics in. I don't know if that's going to work. I'd prefer to have a mandated organics curb as we have on the Upper West Side. So we have a bill to that effect. I don't know if it'll pass, but that's an issue that everybody's concerned about. Another big topic that people are interested in is speed cameras. So my understanding is that it is pending in Albany, which is where speed cameras lie. I think there's general agreement on making them more hours. Right now, it's just during the school hours, and it's only in certain locations. So I believe that the folks in Albany are considering more hours, 24/7, and more fines, graduated. Not, I think, those that have graduated fines would not have their license taken away or points on their license, because then there's a concern that you would never be able to get to work. So that's what's going on with speed cameras. The mayor asked all of us for subway stations that have challenges in terms of cleanliness or maybe ADA access and so on. So we've certainly given him an Upper West Side list. I assume that you are also doing the same as community boards, but I just want to let you know that is something that is being asked by the mayor. Helicopters, as you know, we've been working on this for a very long time. I believe that the legislation that the 3 members of Congress have proposed, which says no helicopters over any city of 7 million or more, hasn't passed in Washington, but it's the best way to go. We also have a bill that would say, you know, they have to be quieter coming out of New York, not so easy to enforce. We also are going to be pushing, there's a RFP, as probably board 1 knows, for the downtown heliport that is coming up soon. And we would like to have no non-essential helicopters flying out of that heliport. Some RFP come forward, I consider that most definitely. We also have the tree situation. According to the budget, I believe the mayor's proposing 2,000 trees. I know there's this issue of 1 million, but that's a hope, not definite, just so we know. And we have on the Upper West Side, Memorial Day coming up, which everybody's welcome to. It is at 89th Street and Riverside Drive, and it is the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial, and it's a really big deal for those who are interested in celebrating Memorial Day. Just in terms of legislation, I think we all have a lot that have been proposed. I talked a little bit about the helicopters. We also are concerned about the closure, and I know we all feel about this, of the veterans hospitals. And I feel very, very strongly that Manhattan and Brooklyn should not be closed. We have a resolution to that effect. The other issue, which is very minutia but of concern, is that when you have a street sign, I think it's a little confusing as to who that person is. It's been confusing for years. Where there is current information going back a certain number of years, but not forever, has their own list. But I think it should be at the Department of Transportation website. So we're asking that that take place and that it go all the way back to the beginning of the co-naming so that it's not just current. Same thing with historic and cultural markers. I think we need, and not a complete, but a more robust program as to what our history is on buildings. We want to like that. Also have, I've always been concerned about tenants who end up on a list because they don't pay their rent for legitimate reasons and then they can't get bonded. So we have a list, a bill to deal with that. And we also are, concerned about the improving sick time. There's a lot of sort of loopholes in that. And we also are hoping to have some food and nutrition education listed in your schools so people know exactly when there is local purchasing from the upstate farms that's going into the school food. We've been trying to work on that for a long time. Something from pre-pandemic, which you have to decide if it's still helpful, which is limit the number of sightseeing bus licenses. During the pandemic, we saw no buses, but now that we have the return, good news, of the we just look at this because the buses, particularly downtown, tend to be very, very tying up a lot of space. And then we are looking, and this is brought up by Board 9 on the issue of the sale of Housing Development Fund company units, meaning the HDFC/TIL/ANCP and that whole issue. So those are some of the things that we're Councilmember Power. We're going to be introducing a package bill soon in the CRT, commercial rent tax, just in Manhattan. It's an outrageous tax, does not help our local businesses, and we'd like to see it be amended, changed. I want to make sure that the supermarkets have no commercial rent tax. We're going to lose our supermarkets if they continue to have that. So those are some of the things that we're working on, and congratulations on all the work that you're doing.
Great. Thanks so much, Councilmember. With that, unless there are any other council members on the call, I just want to hand it off to Keisha Sutton-James, our Deputy Borough President, just to talk a little bit more about the cannabis education, as well as some of the most recent events that were happening in the Borough President's office.
Thanks, Tricia. I'm going to actually start out by saying something that I didn't tell you I was going to say, which is that I too salute you and Eric and the entire team, and frankly our entire office for the effort and work and thoughtfulness, frankly, that was put into the appointment process. The amount of energy, time, back and forth, kind of conversations with council members, et cetera, but also really, frankly, in the evaluation process, it was a really impressive and Herculean effort. And so I salute you for everything that you guys have done to make this happen. I wanted to say one thing about the appointments. I know Trisha's gonna be talking a little more. And I'm looking forward to her talking about the diversity and the thoughtfulness and et cetera. But I wanted to say one thing about the appointments. It is, it was around the fact that I've heard myself personally, I've heard still some lingering questions around why existing board members were asked to interview. And I just wanted to reiterate so that each of you can hear. We thought it was important, given that much of our team is new and don't know many of the council. Many of the community board members. Not meaning the community affairs team, but we're getting to know every single community board member. It was important that we had that kind of, in-depth process to get to know every community board member, but also to be able to have a fair and how do I say this, fair and I'll just call it equitable process that we could also evaluate every single applicant on and be able to share, some of that with council members as well. So I know that some people were, still a little maybe frustrated around having to do that. But we appreciate everyone going through that process with us, and also, and I appreciate each one of you who has acknowledged the team and has seen, particularly, I think it was Russell was the first person to say that this is a thankless job. It is. So I thank you for thanking them, because I'm proud of all the work that they've done. And it's very, very hard to get it all, to make everyone happy. It's nearly impossible actually to make everyone happy. So I wanted to say that. Secondly, I wanted to just touch upon, we had a fantastic event a couple of nights ago, yesterday. No, it was 2 nights ago. Sorry. It's all a blur right now. For Jewish American Heritage Month, we celebrated the Heritage Month in collaboration with the Met Council, UJA Federation, and JCRC at the Surrogates Court in a gorgeous space, where we honor the work of Jewish Americans who are working to eradicate poverty and fight for equity, and also, of course, fighting against hate in New York. And amazing speeches and just energy from each of the honorees. The program also included an amazing conversation with former Borough President Ruth Messenger and David Greenfeld and Gideon Taylor, as well as a special performance from members of the Klezmatics, who Adele gave a special shout out for, saying she hadn't seen them in decades. So that was a very special treat. Again, and the other thing, as Trisha said, I wanted to touch upon is the work that we're doing around cannabis. We now have a name. It's the Cannabis Equity and the Manhattan Borough President's Cannabis Equity Initiative. The work will be centered around several different areas, but the one that is most transparent right now is around the educational forums that we are partnering with as many partners as we possibly can. So we were able to partner with CBs 9, 10, and 11 on the one that Cicely mentioned that was on the 20th of April. No, it wasn't the 20th, because that was in the middle of the week. It doesn't matter. It was a few weeks ago. Indeed, that was an incredible event. We also partnered, thanks to Mara Fitzgerald on CB2, who led a tremendous effort to bring together CBs 1, 2, 3, 4 at the Sheen also a couple of weeks ago. We're partnering with the New York Urban League on another one coming up next Wednesday on the 25th. That we've reached out to several uptown community boards about, inquiring as to whether you'd be interested and able to co-sponsor, if you will, and join and co-market it. I'm waiting to hear back from all of you, and it would just mean obviously you're putting your logo on it and promoting as well. And we're looking to do this more across the entire island, obviously, given the nature of the legislation focusing on the areas of the island that have been most impacted by prior marijuana legislation. So obviously, 2, 8, 9, 10, 11, I'm sorry, 9, 10, 11, 12. We want to do multiple, but we want to make sure that we are at least doing one cannabis forum in each community board. So we'll be reaching out. Keisha Smith, who some of you know, rejoined our office. She was with Mark's office when he was a council member, and she had a baby and was on maternity leave and is now back and is the director of strategic initiatives and organizing. So she'll be focusing on initiatives that are island-wide, or at least 2 community boards or more wide, if you will, issues that spread across more than 2 community boards, and again, in island-wide initiatives. And we're also eventually we'll have a small version of this, but launching later in the year, a volunteer corps also to be able to help service organizations across the island, and helps staff some of the events that we will be doing across the island. That was all part of her future portfolio. But back to cannabis, she and Aya, who you also know, and myself are working very hard on pulling together all of the elements that will be part of the Cannabis Equity Initiative, including the educational forum. So more to come on the entirety of the initiative. We would love to work, and speak and be in partnership with each of your cannabis task forces, so that we are sharing information around, the areas. Barry, I heard what you were saying, earlier around the resolution that was passed, and you're looking to get past the full board. So the areas of advocacy that you are pushing, as well as, potential areas of advocacy, which will be one of the elements that'll be part of the initiative that we will be pushing, so that, we can share information, and hopefully we will all, want to be, advocating for some of the same things. So we will circle back, Keisha and myself, and I will circle back to make sure that we're in touch with each of your cannabis task forces that we're not already in touch with, and look forward to partnering with each of the community boards on at least one education forum, if you're willing. And I hope each one of you will be willing to host such a forum. That's it.
Thanks, Thanks, Keisha. Just a couple other things, folks, then we can move the agenda along. I just wanted to, I'm not worried about our borough president. I'm sure he's absolutely fine. But I wanted to, in his absence, I know if he was here, would talk about COVID and talk about just the kind of rapid rate that we are moving up in terms of levels here. So, we have been passing out COVID kits in areas of particularly high vulnerability to folks. COVID kits meaning test kits, masks, hand sanitizer, thermometers, that sort of thing. We are still passing out kits and just even testing kits throughout the borough in other areas. Please, we have this kind of note that we put out to folks, but I'm sure you all know this, but you can order more home tests now to be delivered. I'm going to put that information into the chat so that you all can have it and you guys can share it with your folks. But if you are in need of anything in terms of PPE, just keep us posted. And I know that we've done this earlier, but if you hear of other groups or things like that, it's helpful for us to know. I don't know our stock right at this moment, but I know that we've been keeping a list of organizations and requests in, so that when we do get supplies in, that we can kind of directly connect you with those. And I think I was talking to a couple of boards about, and I think it was CB2, if I remember correctly, but we connected a few boards directly, so that if you do have people in your district office that need tests, or you find that it would be helpful to have a couple boxes of N95 masks or things like that, or hand sanitizer, we'll do our best to help support you guys in that. So please keep that in mind. Thank you all for bearing with us as we, it's the appointment process is really not, it doesn't feel done yet, but we will soon be in a better place, I think, once a weekend happens or a day off happens. But we really appreciate everybody's patience with this. It was really important to us, as you know, and you've heard me say before, to try to get our appointments done in an efficient, kind of timely manner, despite kind of starting a little later in the process, just because of the transition between borough presidents. We are excited to be able to send out those letters, and but I think that, frankly, we still have a lot of cleaning up to do. If you haven't received a list of like a roster from our office, you will be receiving a roster from our office, and apologies for not getting that to you just a little bit sooner. We are also, if you can't tell from the folks on the backgrounds of all of our screens, working remotely this week due to a facilities upgrade in our office. So it's just gone a little slower than normal, but you should have received a roster. You will receive a roster. You have, after we sent out appointment letters, we also had a few folks for a wide range of reasons, like tell us, oh, like mid-year that they may not be returning or things like that. So there are a couple vacancies that we still need to fill on those. So, we will be filling those, and just give us a little time to let the dust settle here. Of the folks that we did appoint, we're really excited to welcome 91 completely new first-time appointees. And you've probably heard this before if you've had the borough president come talk to you, but it's worth saying again that over 70% of those brand new appointees are identified as part of the BIPOC community, which is really exciting. We have over a quarter of them are under the age of 30. And I'm really excited, just as an example on CB2, to say hello to I think the first person under 30, or at least the only person under 30 on CB2. As one example, I got to see 18-year-old Addison leave on CB8, have his first board meeting yesterday, which is really exciting. And it's just kind of cool to see these young people join these boards. Over 17% of the first-time appointees identify as the part of the LGBTQ plus community. And I can rattle off more data for you and things like that, but the truth is that we try to as consciously and as thoughtfully as possible look holistically at every board and see how we could diversify and bring new voices to the table that haven't been necessarily there before, while also keeping in mind the needs. Only because I saw CB8 last night, I also think we welcomed a new veteran onto your board last night, which is exciting because that was something that you guys specifically asked for in terms of having a veteran voice. And speaking of, the VA hospitals and things like that, I think it's really worthwhile to see. This, but it's worth repeating that we receive half of, by charter mandate, we have to receive half of the nominations for appointments from council members of those respective districts. So that was, of course, a big component of overall appointments, and does require a lot of back and forth. And we have a lot of new council members, so there's I think a real difference in how they kind of looked at this part of their responsibilities, and can talk about that for a long time. But overall, I think that we're really hopeful about the folks that we have on the board. In general, when it comes to folks that we had to say goodbye to, we did say goodbye to board members, and generally it's not a policy in our office to really comment. I know you've heard me say this before on the specifics of anybody, but we do want to just reiterate, and Mark will be saying this a lot at a lot of board meetings, but we want to reiterate how grateful we are for their cumulatively hundreds of years of service on the boards. We think it's wildly important and extremely valuable. And as somebody who only served a mere 10 years on her board, I can really just say that truly I know just how important those every member is in terms of what they contribute to the boards. And, every decision was not a light decision. And I'm sure you probably saw this or heard this as I have been giving you updates and talking to you about this for the last few months. So what happens next? You should be receiving kind of rosters from us, and if you haven't already, your district managers have hopefully received the information so that you can be making your committee appointments, so that you can be updating your lists online. And, if it hasn't happened, I apologize, and we'll, hopefully have that done by the end of this week. There have been some I use an example of somebody, I think, on a lower board who just decided that it was their time to be done and stepped down off the board. We have a couple of vacancies in a couple of different boards, and we will be handling those, but frankly, we're just still kind of cleaning up and making sure everything is accurate on our side. So we'll be, cleaning that up and talking to you. And some of those vacancies are council member nominees. So again, we'll be having to go back to the council member to see where they want to go for those nominees. But thank you for keeping our office updated on that. And I apologize if there's a little confusion on those. There's just I think that during the natural course of community boards, we have some folks who, are leaving the boards. We will be updating WUFU, which is the system that is then kind of put out on our office website. But again, because just of it taking us a little bit more time, I would expect WUFU to be updated by next week is my hope. So I will let you guys all know about that as well. And in terms of any other information that you need from us, I would say certainly just reach out to me, reach out to the liaison that is working with your board. They've been nothing short of incredible and extraordinarily patient with me as we kind of find our way through this process for the first time. And so they are really kind of on it and, really trying to be responsive to questions and things like that. Yes, Paul.
So you're saying for those of us who haven't received the new rosters, it's going to be by the end of the week, and that's applications and resumes included?
Yeah, you should receive, you should have received, that yours is Eric, and Paul, is the reason why is because Eric's my deputy and I've been throwing things at him left and right, which is why you probably haven't received yours. You probably receive that today, or tomorrow if I were to guess. Eric, not to put anything else on your plate, but yeah, yes. And that's the same thing. If Jeffrey were here from CB4, I'd be apologizing to him because that's the one I've been overseeing and I'm late on everything for Jeffrey too. So thanks, Paul. Again, that, we have looked at this and what Keisha was saying, it's worth mentioning again in terms of equity and that sort of thing. We did for the first time ask our existing board members to go through the same process that new applicants go through. And we did that purposefully. And I frankly don't see us doing it a different way next year either, just because then we get to know everybody. But we did, go through a fairly rigorous process in terms of asking everybody to really go through an interview and a written application with us. It was so that we could, really try to get to better know these boards in a very fast pace. And frankly, we still have a lot of a lot of room to grow on that. But we do think that, it was worthwhile to really put everybody through that process. And I just want to echo our appreciation for everybody's patience and willingness to kind of go on this very new journey with us. So we'll keep talking. If not today, then probably tomorrow or the next day. But again, thank you everybody for your time on this. We really appreciate it. And of course, all the effort that you put into leading your boards. With that, I think that that's it for this. So we'll move on. And do I have, unless there's any new business to discuss, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Fantastic. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Tricia.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you June 2nd, virtual. Bye.
Take care, everyone.